Everyone, and welcome to Groundwater Talk Live. You know, here in the United States, we just love to build stuff. It looks good for the governments to announce a new project where we're building things and new infrastructure all over the place. But when it comes to fixing and maintaining our infrastructure, well, we're not quite so good at that. It's just not sexy to allocate millions and billions of dollars to fixing up our highways, roads, and bridges, and dams and water infrastructure that we have built. So as a consequence, we tend to kick the can down the road, and and things tend to break down because they never seem to get fixed. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of asset management. We're back on that track. I came across a series of articles on Texas water infrastructure that I wanted to share that really illustrate the problem I just indicated. That a lot of this stuff goes back. Texas infrastructure goes back for quite a ways and back to the 1800s, even some of this stuff. So it tends to break if you don't fix it. But before we get going, I'd like to ask you to like, comment, and share. I always answer all the comments that people post on the videos. All my videos are up on YouTube, so you can. But I take comments on LinkedIn and try to respond to everything. It all helps to get the word out there. We're trying to build our subscriber base, so I appreciate each and every one of you that like and comment and share. So let's get into today's topic a little bit. And like I said, we like to build things. We don't like to fix things. And allocating money to fix things just is not something that people like to do. As a consequence, there's never enough money there, so the can gets kicked down the road, and it just ends up getting kicked farther down the road and farther down the road until things start to deteriorate and break and becomes an emergency. Well, we all know that emergencies cost a heck of a lot more money than planned replacements and doing things systematically. And that is the whole purpose of an asset management program, is to calculate what your assets are, to take your assets, calculate what remaining life they have, and then set aside budgets to replace those things on track. I mean, that's a simplified version of an asset management plan, and it keeps things fixed in repair and everything operating as it should, within a defined budget. We usually have a capital improvement program that sets aside those allocated funds to replace those assets, but a lot of people don't do that, or sometimes emergency repairs eat into things, and they take money from the capital improvement plan to do emergency repairs, because that's the only place they have money for, and so that money gets eaten up and doesn't get used for what it's supposed to be used for, or there just is not an adequate capital improvement plan or asset management plan in place. We here tend to harp on that a lot because we think, probably the biggest thing the best thing that a water utility could do, especially small to medium sized water utilities, is put in place at least a simple asset management program to keep your assets fresh. And as we'll see from some of these news articles I'm going to talk about, is that you have to do rate increases. People don't like rate increases. If you can have a capital improvement plan, not have to do rate increases, then you're really doing your job running the utility efficiently. So let's dive in a little bit here. Let me bring up my screen share and hold on a minute here. Where are we at? So this is our first article here that I'm going to look at, and we're going to uh, go through. This is kind of a little factual. This is from the Texas Tribune, and it's a little factual thing. There's some anecdotal stuff that I'm going to show you here in a little bit too. But I just wanted to go through this because this really kind of summarizes the extent of the problem they're facing here in Texas. And Texas, as it says up here at the beginning, Texas has more than 7,000 water systems. If you go to California, for instance, they have over 10,000 water systems out there. And so in Texas that we're talking about here today, it basically says that a fraction of them self-reported they lost 30 billion gallons of water due to broken pipes and leaks in 2021. We know that is way underestimated is what it comes down to. So just the water loss alone, but there are some contamination issues that we get with these broken pipes. But it all costs money. Emergency repairs cost more than planned repairs. That's just the fact of life here. So let's just go through this article here, and like it says, it's easy to take water for granted if everything's humming along. All our water utilities basically are underground, so out of sight, out of mind, right? Until you get a water main break, and we just had one at our high school here just at the beginning of the week. So it really creates a puts a crimp in things, and it's expensive to go out and do these emergency repairs. So what they start off with, so some positive news is Texas has a historic state budget surplus, and expected influx of 2.5 billion of water funding from the federal government. So there may be some money to fix some of these things. The problem is getting this money out, having people apply for it, getting it out into the right hands. Sometimes it doesn't make it there. A lot of times it doesn't make it there. And usually small to medium-sized water districts where I focus my business are the ones that end up on the short end of the stick, and they end up trying to band-aid everything together. So so it's good that there's money there, but sometimes the people that really need it don't necessarily get it. Um, anyway, as I point out here, it's not a done deal yet. But okay, so they kind of start off here, and this is just kind of an introductory article on what the problem is. So uh, water infrastructure, basically, it's all the component. It's a water utility, the water source, the treatment plants, and the distribution lines to get the water out to the customers is really what it is. So public water utilities, generally the most common form, mutual water companies. There are some private utilities, and some are run by local government agencies. So there's a lot of different forms of water utilities out there, but Texas has 7,000 of them. So pretty good size number. Like I said, California has over 10,000. Other states, a little less, but that kind of puts it in perspective there. But as they point out here, small towns are really make up the vast majority of these water systems. You get in places like Dallas and Houston, and they have bigger water systems that cover more area. You get out into the rural areas, and you have these smaller water systems that aren't as well funded, and that's usually where the challenges lie. So here is this is the crux of the problem here, and here's where we get into the asset management component: is how old are the pipes? And this is let me just so the oldest pipes date back to the 1890s. How long is a pipe in the ground going to last? I will tell you that the minute you put infrastructure in the ground, it starts deteriorating from the moment you put it in the ground. 1890s pipes, you're lucky they're still, some of them are even operating. So as I point out here, there's no centralized database that keeps track of the age. um, no centralized database, but the individual water districts should be tracking this through an asset management program. Every asset, every line, every pump, every component in that water system should be tracked through an asset management program that keeps track of the age, the useful life it has left, and the replacement costs of that asset. Clearly, that is not happening. So we're going to keep preaching on asset management here until everybody's doing it. But really, this just illustrates the problem is that a lot of these water systems don't even know where a lot of their assets are. They until they get a leak and there's water flooding up through road surface, they might not even know the location of that line or valves that are down there. So this is a problem. This is a real problem. Another component of asset management is knowing where your assets are, having everything geolocated. There's no excuse in this day and age when we have cheap GIS out there to have everything geolocated so you know exactly where everything's at. But it's a little bit of a process to get it into a GIS database, but so important, and it'll save you a lot of money in the long run. So they go on to say that much of the state's water infrastructure was developed in the post-World War II area and has not been upgraded since. And this get back to my introductory comment here. We love to build stuff, and we've been great at building stuff. Post-war, post-World War II, we built a lot of stuff. We built the interstate highway system. We built a lot of water infrastructure. We built all the dams. We built a lot of stuff, and then we've just ignored it since. And now it's falling apart, and the bill is coming due, and it's a very big bill. So this is something that asset management gets at. We're going to have to whittle it off a piece at a time and go from there. The responsibility starts with the individual water utilities and their individual asset management programs. Um, so bottom line here, 2022 Texas Rural Water Association survey of small to mid-sized rural water systems, the ones that we focus on here, found that the average date of installation for the systems was 1966. So we're into 2023. So you can see we have, you know, 40, 50, 60 years we're going on of these water systems, and pipes just do not last that long. There's a lot of corrosion going on in the ground, and probably the stuff that was put in 1966, not the best water, not the best quality steel. We tend to do more upgraded structures these days that don't deteriorate as fast, but it still deteriorates. But back in 1966, the quality was not as good, so those are going to break down more. So what affects water infrastructure? And like I say, this is just kind of an introductory article, but I think it's just kind of interesting to go through this. Um, they're going to talk about climate change, of course, because you always got to talk about climate change. But in Texas, a lot of extreme temperatures, hot and cold. So we saw a few years back how everything froze up down there. They got an unexpected cold snap. You know, fluctuating back and forth temperatures, even though this water infrastructure is underground, it can still be affected by cold temperatures, hot temperatures. It's going to make the pipes expand and contract, and eventually you'll get breaks from that stress, especially when things date back as far as 60 years. So that's so drought cycles. Just things, ground movement because of drought cycles, things drying up can happen too. Here's a nice picture of a water break, so spurting out there and yeah, so that's what happens a lot. Um, General wear and tear is a biggie. Um, so they talk about who doesn't have water infrastructure and who needs it. Well, there are places, poor places along the border and stuff that don't have good water infrastructure, and so they need that. Probably not really, that's another issue, but probably not germane to our discussion today. But here's the crux of the matter here. So why does the age of the pipes matter? Um, so the older Texas's water pipes get, the bigger the threat they are to the state's water supply. Things age, they break down, they rust, they corrode, and that is just a matter of, and then eventually they're going to break. The line thins from corrosion, it's going to break because everything under there is under pressure. So whether it's losing billions of gallons of water because of a line break or leaky pipe contaminating water with lead, that's a little bit of a strange statement, but leaky pipes can cause some problems with maintaining your chlorine residuals and bacteria issues. but lead pipes are a whole other issue. That's it's not really a leaky pipe issue. So yeah, newspapers don't always understand things. The, but the age matters, and that's why when we do an asset management, we keep track of the age of our assets and compare it with the actual useful life when it comes to looking at replacement timeframes. Um, so small breaks, leaks, and cracks in older pipes can allow foreign materials to contaminate the water supply. This is true. Um, rusting, corrosion, that is an issue. And basically, they go on to say that Texas loses a significant amount of water from infrastructure breaks and leaks. Some numbers here: 136 billion gallons of water in 2020 and 132 billion gallons of water in 2021, uh, uh, according to water loss audit data. And that's usually not even accurate. That's always understated. So you can see that's a huge amount of water. So this is at a minimum that's lost revenue to the water district, but every time you have a line leak, it's under a road. You got to fix the road, and it costs money. So at least 30 billion gallons of loss was caused by reported breaks and leaks that water agencies repaired in 2021. Um, the other 100 billion gallons can be attributed to faulty infrastructure and other issues. Um, so that's really uh, interesting. For comparison, there were only 2 billion gallons lost to reported breaks or leaks in the entire state in 2011. So, is this statistic a reporting issue? They just didn't report things better back then, or is it really a trend? And probably it's a little bit of both. It would be my guess. Is as things age, I mean, you got another 10 years of aging infrastructure there. It's starting to break down, and it's starting to get to the critical point that we're going to have to spend huge sums of money to replace this infrastructure that is breaking down. The bill is coming due for our deferred maintenance, as it were. Um, so anyway, so what do they say is what happens when infrastructure breaks? Well, a lot of times you're getting dropping chlorine residuals in your water if you have a leak. And that can sometimes result in, if it drops below the level that's required to maintain protection against bacteria growing in the lines, then you're required to issue a boil water notice. And utilities hate issuing them. Customers freak out when they get them. It basically means that your water is potentially not safe, and as a precaution, you need to boil your water before you drink it. And obviously, don't drink it while it's still boiling, but 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 to kill the bacteria, potential bacteria. So, I mean, the bacteria may or may not be there, but because your chlorine residuals have fallen because of leaks in and out of the line, you can get that bacteria contamination in their coliform, and it can create problems. So they issue boil water notices, and I'll show you in the next article that these boil water notices have really been going up in Texas. So they talk about state requirements. The state hands out money, and there's money available through state revolving funds, federal funds coming in that get distributed too. But ultimately, asset management comes down to the individual water utilities. So, and they talk a little bit about what state lawmakers are doing. Population growth, obviously, population growth means building new infrastructure, and we build more infrastructure that we don't maintain, and we end up exacerbating the problem down the road. So here you go. So that is this particular article. Let's look at one that's got a little bit more anecdotal stories in here. And what I really wanted to get at here is there some information here that talking about different stories on this, but what I really wanted to get at is down here they talk about boil water notices, and we can see that they kind of bump along here. Let me see. Where's my? We can see that right along here, fairly flat, and then boom, just jumps up here like that. So we see that really jumping up there. Some of that happened. They had the big winter storm in 2021 that caused a lot of problems, and it's kind of the boil water notices have climbed since then. They've come down a little bit, but much higher than they have been. So this is a challenge. So generally these are going to be in rural areas for water systems that don't have as much money. So they're going to band-aid a lot of these repairs, and they're going to have to end up repairing them again in 6 months, a year, and it just becomes this never-ending problem instead of replacing stuff as scheduled. So this is where things break out. Is these are boil water notices kind of by county, and you can see that the rural counties have a disproportionate number. And as I said once again, is that rural counties, smaller water systems, smaller cities, smaller water systems, not as well funded. They don't do the repairs. They get breaks. They lose their chlorine residuals, and they have to issue boil water notices. It's a problem. So small to medium sized district tend to have poorer funding. They're afraid to raise rates that they need to. They don't usually have good asset management programs in place, and ends up being the result. So um, things are coming to a head. And Texas really is this is just one example that I came across these articles and wanted to share, but this is repeated pretty much in every state throughout the country. It really is. This is just some good data here. It's harder to get at some other states' data like this, so that's why I want to share it. But realistically, Texas is not standing alone here. This is a problem throughout the country. All right, so let's go down here. Um, there's another chart down here I wanted to share with you. So this is kind of by location, and you can kind of see um, what happens here. This is 2012 to 2023, so you can see the trends in boil water notices. And once again, a boil water notice is really kind of a proxy for water line breaks and leaking water systems. So you can kind of treat it that way, because what happens once again is a lot of times during a water break, your chlorine residuals and that part of the distribution lines, and usually a boil water notice is only going to affect certain parts of the system, but they have to issue it. They notify everybody, but in a certain area, that's where the boil water notice is going to kick in. Uh, but the chlorine residuals tend to fall, and then what happens is you have the potential then, because there's no chlorine in the lines, to kill the bacteria for coliform bacteria to proliferate in those lines, and potentially E. coli is the potential issue there. E. coli is a coliform bacteria, and you could potentially get that coming in if there's no chlorine to kill that in the lines. So the issue of boil water notice, that will kill things, but it is a pain to have to boil all the water you drink. So and you can see East Texas really leads the way there. Central Texas has a lot too, and then it kind of drops off in some different areas. Um, but once again, it kind of breaks out more. These are rural areas, and I think that's mainly what I wanted to show you on this one. There's some interesting stories in here, and I'll post this article up because I think it's interesting. But I think that's pretty much um, what I wanted to look at on there. And then finally, there's this. City of Houston loses 30 billion gallons of water due to failing water infrastructure. So I just said that it happens mainly to rural water districts, but here we have the city of Houston itself is lost 30 billion gallons of water in 2022. So just think about how much money that is lost to, and then the repairs that go into that. So the money that's involved here is really quite substantial. So um, they lost 9 billion gallons from January to April in 2023. So that's pretty substantial water losses. So the combined total loss of revenues is estimated around $150 million. So quite costly. This is just in water revenues. So um, the loss comes despite spending over 34 million to repair water pipes across the metropolitan area. So you can see that this starts to add up. You're talking lost revenue and water system repairs are coming to almost $200 billion here. So this is not a cheap thing. And once again, I lay the foot, I lay the problem at the foot of people not doing adequate asset management. Now, emergencies are going to happen even in the best of water systems that have a full blown asset management program. You're still going to have things, but it's going to be more minimal because you're going to address the problem areas before they become problem areas. Things can still happen. Somebody with a backhoe can cut through a water line, and you have to have an emergency repair. I get it. Or you could have, a weird winter. You could have tornadoes come through, and Texas gets their share of tornadoes to do some damage and other weather problems. And so things can happen, but those are going to be more minimized if you have a good asset management program here. And and probably Houston Public Works Department would claim they do, but clearly they're failing in this regard here. Um, the Houston Chronicle reported the city lost more than 20% of its water supply at least 5 times since the start of 2022. That's a lot. 20%, that's a lot. So lack of funding and rising material costs has made handling pipe repairs difficult for city officials. So even in a city like Houston, you're seeing funding problems that are affecting things. So the Chronicle reported that programs to replace over 7,000 miles of water pipes have slowed significantly. 7,000 miles of water pipes is a lot of infrastructure to maintain. So 140 miles of damaged water pipes were replaced in 2014. So I don't have my calculator handy, but 140 miles out of 7,000 miles total is not a very high percentage. So um, they did, but that's 2014. In 2022, they did 10 miles. So that is an infinitesimally small amount of repairs compared to the total miles, 7,000 miles of water. And so you can see where they're starting to run into problems and where the funding issues are creating problems here. So yeah, of course, the critics say the utility must do more to improve its water system and soon to combat the coming water shortage. Well, of course, you have to throw that in there. So here's the crux of the issue. Here is that Texas has a problem. Everybody has a problem out there. All states. Texas is not alone, like I said, but a lot of this could be solved through a good asset management plan coupled with a good capital improvement plan. Costs are going up. This is true. And that's going to affect everybody. We just need to make adjustments to our funding. We may need to increase rates. And everybody hates to increase rates, but that's something you may have to do. And just to kind of get down here towards the end, this is the Texas Tribune. They actually have a whole section called Broken Pipes where they've compiled a bunch of these stories together on. So it's an ongoing issue. They've got like 5 stories here they've compiled in one section. So kind of running counter to this to kind of wrap up the show is that here we have in Water Online is Mary Scott Neighbors basically says there are no funding shortages out there. So water infrastructure projects face almost no funding shortages anywhere in the U.S. Well, this kind of runs counter to what we were just talking about, doesn't it? So she goes on to talk about that there's all kinds of money available. The bipartisan infrastructure law allocated the largest amount of funding ever to be invested in the country's water resources. More than 50 billion was earmarked. Well, we start to look at some. You start adding the numbers up, and 50 billion is kind of a drop in the bucket. So it's kind of like saying that we have all the money we need out there that's getting out there to everybody. Just is not true. I mean, it sounds good, and she goes on to talk about the North Carolina is going to invest 3.3 billion in water projects over the next 2 years, and all this money out there, 100 million project in Columbus, Ohio, South Carolina, 500 million. You start to throw 500 million here, 100 million there, and 50 billion gets eaten up pretty darn quickly. A lot of this is not making it out to these rural water systems that really are most critical. Although we can see that even people like the city of Houston, or water utilities like the city of Houston, um, have their own share of problems and funding problems. So some of the things we talked about today, they go on to talk about all kinds of different projects out there, and how much money they're throwing at things, and there's all this money available. So, but what we just talked about seems to really run counter to this. Maybe it'll catch up. I don't know, but I think 50 billion sounds like a lot of money. Um, but really, when you start doling it out and just looking at the cost of some of these projects, it's not. It's a drop in the bucket when you look at the total amount of money that's needed to upgrade our water infrastructure throughout the entire country to get it where it needs to be. 50 billion is just a fraction, a tiny fraction of the cost for that. So to say that almost no funding shortages anywhere in the U.S. just does not ring true to me. And it sounds good, it makes a nice headline, but I don't think that's quite true. So that's but you're seeing people out there that are talking like that, and I just find that kind of you know, overly optimistic, and yeah, you want to look on the bright side of things, I guess, but we need to be realistic, and the money just is not getting to where it needs to go. It's not equitably distributed to just a lot of these small water. So they don't know how to apply for the funding a lot of times. These guys, they don't know how to write these grants and things like that. So that's a whole nother topic we can talk about. But it starts with an asset management program, so you understand what you need to repair, and then you can start budgeting and allocating for that. It does not have to be complicated. It can be done relatively easily. Obviously, if you're somebody like the city of Houston, your asset management plan is going to be very complicated. But for a rural water system, with under 1,000 connections, can be done relatively easy, simply. You can start simply and start working towards that progress. So it's critically important to water systems to have this asset management plan. I think it's just a critical thing that you, that's not even up for discussion. It's something you just have to figure out how to do and do it, and then start setting aside the money. Asset management plans and capital improvement plans go hand in hand. They need to work together, and so you need to have both in place. And if you need to raise rates, you got to bite the bullet and do it, because it's worth it, because you do not want to have your water system shut down or consistently be issuing boil water notices. And the thing is, if you issue boil water notices a lot, the regulatory agencies are going to start to notice, and they're going to come in, and you're going to get the hammer dropped on you that way. So that's bad news as well. So really, the major solution to a lot of these problems we're seeing is an asset management program. We've kicked the can down the road way farther than it should have been, and now the bill is coming due. we got to kind of get back on track, and we got to get these asset management plans in place and start doing it. So that is the show for today. I thank you for sticking with me on this. We're trying to keep shows to about half an hour, so people can digest them. So if you would like to be a guest on Groundwater Talk Live, and we're interested in having water experts come on and talk about a variety of topics dealing with water and groundwater issues, this is my Book Me page, or you can contact me directly if you'd like to be on the show. We'd love to have you. And let's see. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. All our videos are up on the YouTube channel, the Groundwater Guy YouTube channel. Subscribe, hit the button. We do this every Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Time. So that is, so we will see you next